Welcome to the Collateral Verifications webinar. Today, everyone is muted, so if you could use the chat or Q&A function, if you have questions, please submit them along the way. We will try to answer those as we go, and if we can't work them in at that moment, we will save them and go over them at the end. There's a Q&A period, so we'll be happy to do that. If you're missing the webinar presentation, it is out on our members-only website under the Collateral Resources tab. These presentations are being recorded and also placed out there shortly after we're done with the webinar. So if you have anybody in your institution who wants to listen to these or you want a refresher, they're out there for the next year until we do this again. So. All right, so today, my name's Elaine Shoemaker. I've been with the bank forever. I came in actually into the wire transfer department and moved over to the safekeeping area. And back in 2008, the safekeeping function and the collateral operations were combined into one department, and I became the manager over that. So, been with the bank forever. So. Anytime you're submitting your QCD form or pledging or releasing securities, that all comes through us on the ops side. So, and I would like to introduce everyone to Deidre. Deidre took Kylie Mergen's position. Kylie moved into a different area within the bank about, 7 or 8 months ago. So Deidre is a great addition to our group. So Deidre, you want to tell them a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so as Elaine alluded to, I'm new to the department and just started in 2022, had the opportunity to come back to credit. I've been at the bank for, it's going on 13 years this July. Was initially a credit analyst and reviewed all of our membership. And then in 2017, I had another opportunity to go and join our legal department and help build out our compliance department. So now I have a good group working with Elaine. I also oversee collateral review and verification process, which we'll be going over today. So yeah, I'm new to the department, and this is my first year doing this. So thanks for joining us.
So today, our goals are to explain why. Why do we perform this collateral verification? We're going to identify the different types of verifications that we actually do. We want to enhance your knowledge of the collateral verification process, make it more streamlined and efficient for you as well as for us. We can get in and get out and not be in your hair for too long. We want to discuss the best practices on how to pass a collateral verification. And we also want to provide you some resources for ongoing collateral information. So, all right, with that.
All right, so why do we perform the collateral verification? Well, if you heard me yesterday, it's just a prudent practice. We would want to validate our collateral that's being pledged. We want to be able to monitor our member loan policy and pledging practices. It's very similar to probably how you would go out and do your own inspection on your own borrowers. We want to trust but verify, so we're going to go out there and do that. We also want to be a part of, if we hear anything out there in the industry, those collateral review officers bring that information back to me, so we have a good grasp of what's going on in the industry. So that's another reason we go out with doing the collateral verification. A big portion of why we do this, it is mandated by regulatory requirements.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure all of you out there are very familiar with how the regulatory process works.
Oh.
We are in the same situation, and we are required to perform collateral verifications and also have specific requirements for collateral eligibility. So, perfect the security interest, readily ascertainable value, reliable discount, liquidate in due course. So we have to be able to prove to our regulators that we can do that. In the history of a Federal Home Loan Bank, or at least us, we've never had to liquidate.
No.
However, we have to still be able to prove that to them. And lastly, to protect the Federal Home Loan Bank and its stockholders, right. Properly classify our assets and just make sure we're in compliance with the underwriting requirements. Excuse me. So preparation is really key in here. You know, I've been on a few calls with some member banks and institutions that they have their core group of individuals that are doing this on a quarterly basis. And it can be very formal or informal, but you must have individuals that are able to complete and approve the QCD form, that are knowledgeable with what the assets are that they can be pledged. And I mean, to be honest, some that I've sat with have been pretty impressive. I mean, they will know this inside and out better than me, so it's very impressive.
That's awesome.
It is. You want to make sure in that preparation that you do review our schedule of eligible requirements. And it's in the NPSG, and it can change. I mean, it doesn't change all that often, but it can be reviewed on a quarterly basis by the board. And if there is a significant change, we will send out a notification to the contacts that are available. So
right.
just be aware when you're going to prepare, it might be a good idea to double check that. Internally, you should have, you know, if you have a process, probably you would have any reports that you use that you can identify and retain critical reports that categorize our assets. So you want to have a process in place, be able to flow to the QCD, and you also want to make sure that that information is correct. Like I said, verify, check that information, see if it's working, and if there's ineligible loans, please, or, you know, remove that from the QCD. But really, it comes down to preparation is key.
All right. So we actually do perform two different types of collateral verification. One is the QCD desk audits, and we perform those just via all the data we collect from you, our members, and from the regulatory reports. We also then provide an on-site collateral verification, and we're going to go into great detail more on that. We'll touch briefly on the desk audits. So as far as the desk audits, we do these every quarter. We do it for all blanket pledge members that report loans on their QCD form. And we do this because we're doing a more, like, it's a reasonability check, right? We're making sure that you're not pledging more than what you're reporting on your call report, right? Does it look reasonable? We validate that the member is, that you're in compliance with the restricted asset categories or the, held for sale. We also verify the subordination, make sure that what is unsubordinated still covers what you're pledging on our QCD form. So, like I said, the QCD desk audits are done quarterly. We're comparing each of the asset categories from your call report, from your line item call report to our QCD asset types. We also look at your assets. Is what you put on your 1231 QCD form the total assets that's on your call report? Because there are a lot of different factors based on that QCD asset total, right? So it limits the amount of held for sale assets that you can pledge. It limits the amount of restricted assets that you can pledge. So we compare those two, make sure that it's reasonable. We try to ignore some of the noise, but we are looking at all of that.
Okay, so as Elaine just mentioned, that's the part that we do here at the bank for, testing our reasonableness with our collateral. So we also have the section where we have on-site collateral verification. And some of you out there may be scheduled for one this year. You might be asking yourself, hey, why am I a lucky one this year to have this done? So really, it is based upon a risk-based approach. We take the following things into consideration. We would look at your any outstanding Federal Home Loan Bank credit obligations. If that's increased over the year, that can be factored into that. Financial performance, obviously that can ebb and flow throughout the year, so that's taken into consideration. Any approval, renewal of special collateral arrangements, over collateral coverage ratios would also be in there. Changes in collateral reporting. So for instance, if you had been a blanket pledge member, I can't talk, that was on delivery, and you've been off delivery recently, you may be in that selection. So that's a reason. and results from previous collateral verifications factor into that. So we really do try to take a risk-based approach, and that's the selection criteria.
Why do we do it?
I know. As I already mentioned, we want to validate the existence of the assets. So again, the trust verify. We want to validate those asset classifications. Make sure that when you're pledging these collateral assets that it's going into appropriate categories. Validate the accuracy of the data provided on the QCD loan support template. So we want to have data integrity. We want to make sure that what you're providing is accurate. The maturity date doesn't match up to everything. Do all the inputs actually match? Validate the eligibility of the assets again to see if it meets our eligibility guidelines. Just one thing I would like to say, and I have heard this and seen this in some of my emails, one thing we are not examiners. I hear it often that the auditors are coming out, the examiners are coming out, and we are not examiners. I mean, it is very similar process, but totally different ways that we're looking at it. We're not there to judge your asset quality or look at that. We are there to simply see that it meets our eligibility requirements.
Well, and we're not any different than you are as our members. You take collateral, you go verify that collateral is there. They've pledged, a herd full of cattle. You're going to go out and look, make sure that the cattle is there.
Exactly.
So we're really not any different. We're just validating that the collateral is there and it meets our underwriting guidelines.
So don't be scared if you get selected.
And
you can't get out of a CV. If you ask if we can skip it, that's not going to probably happen. We'll work with you, but just FYI. And then the frequency of the reviews. So we do have them on an annual, biannual, and triannual basis. I believe the 3 categories actually changed last year to incorporate all 3. In the criteria that is used, we'll look at the top 20 borrowers. Annual, you'd be on average credit obligations to total unsubordinated assets greater than or equal to 15%. Another annual will be average consolidated obligations to total unsubordinated assets greater than equal to 5%, and a financial narrative. So there's some kind of trigger there. There may be some financial performance metric that's triggered, and that's incorporated into that financial narrative.
Oh, right, because we have a whole other department that monitors all the financial health of our members.
They keep an eye on it. So that is that selection. Biannual would be the average credit obligations to total unsubordinated assets greater than or equal to 10% that have not had a review in the previous 12 months. And then triannual, again, is average credit obligations to total unsubordinated assets greater than or equal to 5% that have not had a review in the previous 24 months. So our goal is really try to get a big portion of our membership in there. Again, as I've mentioned, we're required by our regulation to do this. So if we're not coming out and visiting you, we're going to get a visit and questions from our regulator asking why you're not doing this. So that is a component of that. The last thing on there you'll see is manual. Manually, you can be added for a multitude of reasons. During the year, if I'm watching a member and they're, again, asset quality or some kind of deterioration I see declining, we could put you on for a manual during the year too. So just those are some of the other pieces. Annual selection, we do this on the first day of November. I don't honestly know why it has to be the first day, but we try to get it done by the end of the year. But every year it's the first day of November. We go through our selection process based on that criteria, and then once we have our membership identified, you will receive, if you are one of the lucky ones, an email stating that you're going to be up for a collateral verification within the year. And those notifications are sent out to the president contacts and the QCD contacts.
Okay. And well, I was just going to say, maybe we should spin it as, this is a great opportunity for you to get one-on-one conversation with our review officers, help you answer any questions. Is there any type of process improvement we can offer? Anything. We're there for you guys. Yeah. So it's an opportunity.
It really is an opportunity. How's that for selling that? It really is an opportunity. They are the experts and they can help you tremendously. So from the point of notification, you kind of just sit back until one of the collateral review officers actually contacts you. Usually they will contact you about 6 to 8 weeks out prior to when they're anticipating, and they'll get with you and they'll have a conversation, see what dates work with you, things of that nature. we're going to be flexible. We're not going to say, nope, it has to be this day. I mean, you can't get out of it, like I mentioned, but we are going to work with you, and we understand that there's examiners coming out. You have priorities too. So just know that we will work with you when we establish that. Once everything's established, the date, everything's aside, you would get a final formal engagement letter that states, here's everything, the dates, the terms, everything. This is the exact time we're going to be out. So that would be the last notification you would get. And during the process, our collateral review officers would ask for numerous documentation. So, for instance, you would be asked to fill out the QCD loan support template. And this information for the collateral review officers is really used to reconcile against what was reported on the QCD. So before they proceed, they want to make sure that information is reconciled.
Right, because they tie it back. They tie the loan listing that we get back, we tie it back to the QCD form that they're.
Exactly. So they want to make sure that it matches. The collateral verification questionnaire, they'll send that out. They'll request that you have available any loan delinquency reports, your watch list, Rego, any reports you have on that, list of loan participations, list of subordinated loans. They'll want to see your loan policy when they get there and just review it to make sure everything looks adequate. Quality control of the credit review policy, or whatever it is that you have to, the frequency review of your borrowers, things of that nature. Members' internal procedures for completing the QCD, because one of the things we want to make sure is that you do have some process. I mean, even if it's not to the extent that it's built out very formally, they have something in place to get the QCD form filled out accurately. And then we would want to look at the servicing custodian agreements, again, just to make sure that we have that record all up to date.
Okay. Hey, Deidre, we've got a couple of questions. What is the time frame between selection and email notification? So I'm assuming since from November 1st to the time that we send out the notification, say, hey, guess what?
I want to say, I can't, don't quote me for sure, but I want to say it was within 3 weeks, I believe, is what we did.
Before the end of the year.
Yeah,
right?
It's definitely before the end of the year. There's not a surprise on that, so yes.
Okay. So next question is there a Federal Home Loan Bank underwriting requirements quick reference guide that is more recent than March of 2022?
Okay, so it is my understanding that my collateral review officers have tried to put together some kind of documentation. I believe that's what you're referencing. However, the problem with that, at least since I've been in here, none of it has been updated. So I would hate to hand those documents out. No one's reviewing them. So your best bet is to go off the Members Products and Service Guide. That is going to be the most accurate eligibility requirement. So,
and we really haven't made a whole lot of changes to the underwriting guidelines this last year. We've made some changes that were approved, that are going into effect next week. We've gone over those changes in our previous webinars, but if we have time at the end, we can do that. But nothing really to the underwriting guidelines themselves.
No. And just like I said, I think that's an informal document if that's what you're referencing. So if you do not have anything to answer your question other than the MPSG. Let's see. So sample selection. Again, as I mentioned, the CRO is or the collateral review officer is going to want to confirm that the QCD template information reconciles with the actual QCD before they complete samples. So you may go back and forth with your collateral review officer through this process because they want to get that accurate before we do the sample selection. So sample selection depends on the number of loans pledged. If it's greater than 500, we use a statistical sampling method with a 90% confidence, 5% precision, and 5% error. If it's under 500, we use a 10% of loans pledged. It is based on the distribution of asset categories utilized. So if the biggest category you have is commercial real estate, that's going to be where most of the loans are going to be reviewed at. The core sample, it is a minimum of 20, 102 maximum. And in addition, we do select the 5 largest loans to be reviewed. And once the collateral review officer puts all that together, they will provide you a list of loans that they're going to be reviewing prior to them arriving on site. So please look over that document, make sure everything looks accurate, and that if you have any questions, reach out to them and get those, answered before they're arriving. In addition, if I were you and I was in that situation, once I knew what my loan listing was, that they're going to be for review, I would probably pull those loans and start going through them and just making sure that all the documentation looks like it's accurate. I mean, that's how I would do it. So, I mean, you can choose to do what you want, but that would probably be a good practice for us.
Well, it makes the review go so much faster, right?
Yes.
If we've got all of the documentation there when we're on site,
Yes.
we can breeze through that. The first 20 hours, there's no charge. So if we can get in and out of the door under that, there's no fee. But if we're trying to prove or, trying to get an ineligible, what appears to be an ineligible loan and make it eligible, we're looking for documentation and waiting, it just takes a lot longer.
Yeah,
So,
it does.
okay. Yeah, we have a question that came in, and we're going to slide it in here real quick if we
Okay,
could.
that's fine.
If there is a change on the eligibility requirement for a loan from the underwriting guidelines, say a 1-to-4 residential blanket pledge of 100% loan-to-value ratio when we book the loan and determine it meets all other underwriting requirements, and use this loan to pledge, but then in a later quarter, the requirements change and is reduced from 100% to say 90%. Will that make this loan now not qualified? The question is, if the loan qualifies when the loan is booked, is it grandfathered for a later QCD? The answer to your question is no, it is not. It's not grandfathered in. You'll have to, as these underwriting requirements change, it's kind of a review. You have to go back and review, and do all of our loans still meet the underwriting guidelines? So unfortunately, there's no way we would be able to grandfather all of those in. So.
Okay. So on-site, I mean, this is one of the things that I can relate to. It's going to be similar to where an exam would start, but you would meet with your collateral review officer when they arrive on site. And really, this can be a formal or informal meeting. It really depends on the institution itself. But you can sit down and discuss the parameters of the meeting, like how it'll flow. Do you want to have daily updates? Do you want to have updates at a certain time of the day if there's exceptions? If you have questions, or if they have questions that they can't find something in a loan document, do you want them to come to you right away? So those are things you can discuss, when they first arrive upon site. And these are some of the documents that you would be reviewing during the collateral verification. Note, mortgage, title, appraisal, credit review, very common documents. And then at that time when they arrive, you could also hand to them any of those additional documents that they had asked for, like the loan policy, any kind of watch list, director officer loans, rego, things of that nature that they can review once they're on site. And then really from there, they're going to take those loan listings that they had, and they're going to go through and look at it for eligibility requirements. As I stated earlier, we're not looking at this as a way to get you. It's not I got you. We're not assessing your asset quality or anything of that nature. We're just wanting to make sure that it meets our eligibility requirements. So the first thing is obviously the original note. We need to have the wet ink original note. That is, I will stress that. I've been asked that question multiple times in my role, and that is still the status at this time. We need wet ink.
Unless, of course, you're pledging an e-note.
Exactly, and we'll get to that later.
Okay,
yes.
Perfect.
Yes, and the other you'll see on here, and any modifications, change in terms, renewal. Last year, I believe March of 2022, we did change it where you can accept e-signatures on modification. So that is a little bit of a change from previous years, and that is acceptable as long as we have a promissory note that's wet inked and it meets the other the other eligibility requirements in the MPSG. And again, security of the note. We're going to look at the mortgage deed of trust, very common things, security agreement. We're going to go look at the lien position. Do we have a final title policy or the UCC? Where are we at in position? Confirm that we're first lien that we're supposed to be.
Right.
And loan to value is going to look at those appraisals and valuations to make sure we're within those parameters that we're requesting in our eligibility requirements.
Mhm.
So again, very common things, and it's going to be more of a high level. We're not going to look at this to underwrite. It's just simply confirming that that information exists. Okay, does it meet our eligibility? Just continued, credit review. We're going to look at FICO and debt to income and employment verification if it's necessary for the asset category type. Debt service coverage ratio, can't speak. You know, is it on, do we have it on the right category? Multifamily and commercial real estate require it. Are we meeting it? Do you have that correct? Supplemental information, a lot of times this is information that my collateral review officers really don't know they may need until they get there. So for example, the phase one, they may dig into this note and not even realize that, hey, I need a phase one, but maybe they saw something in an appraisal, or maybe they saw something in a loan write-up that, you know, kind of makes them think, you know, there could be something wrong with this loan. Like maybe there could be some risk to the environment and maybe we need to go a step further. So they're going to ask for that information. Financial statements may need that, just depending again on the loan category. PACE validation. It is a test that we have to do for regulatory purposes. And again, need a tax statement. They'll want to look at that to confirm that there is not a PACE lien. So just some of those items. Technical exceptions. You know, security instruments issued. Do we have the correct dates on things? Do we file it properly? Is the information correct?
Right.
Rate charge is different from note. I mean, yes, does the maturity match? Does the note match? Kind of confirming to make sure everything looks accurate.
Right. Because we're going back to, we would have to be able to liquidate this loan if we had to take possession of it. And all of those are important key factors in selling a loan out on the market. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we have to have all of that documented appropriately.
Yeah, and then maybe the review officers, they've told me that they've reviewed stuff and maybe it's a typo. It's just wrong. And they've brought it to the members' attention and they're like, oh, yeah, that's not what it should have been. We need to get that corrected.
Right.
So, I mean, there are other aspects to that part.
Good. Hey, Deidre, we had another question come in. They said our last review in 2020 was conducted off-site due to COVID restrictions. We have received notification of a collateral review sometime this year. Are the reviews back to being done on-site? And I can say, yeah,
Okay.
I knew that.
Okay,
Yes,
go ahead.
yes,
Answer that.
yes. We are back on site. We found that those were very time-consuming and more challenging to do, doing them, shipping documents back and forth, or copies of documents to go through. So yes, it's much better face-to-face.
And I've heard, Curtis, maybe I'm heard wrong, but it sounds like a lot of the members enjoy having the face-to-face. So that's my understanding. It gives them that one-on-one with the collateral review officer, and that's what it sounds like most enjoy. So yes, they are back, as Elaine said, on site. So, does the loan meet our eligibility criteria, additional qualifications? Again, gonna look through, see if that past due, if there are past due, does it meet the right asset category that allows loans that are past due? Wholly owned loans, we want to make sure that what's being pledged is owned by you, so we're going to review that information. Classified assets, is it on non-accrual or substandard or doubtful? We're not going to allow that. That's not eligible to be pledged. And we're going to look for any rego, officer, FHLBank employee loans. Right. So if someone comes across and they see Elaine's a loan in the file, they're going to kick it out. It's not eligible.
Sorry about that, guy.
Yeah. And servicing custodian information, again, just making sure that we have what is on file is correct. And then really consistency throughout the file. They're going to look, and to be honest, it's going to be to some level a fraud detection measure. You want to make sure, they're going to want to make sure that in every signature line that it's the same person or the correct people are signing the documents that need to be there. So just another little test that they do when they're out on site. Okay, The collateral verification findings. So, like I said, at the beginning of the on-site review, you could have set up how that's going to look like, but they should be having contact with you throughout the process, and they'll work with you and the staff, to get things corrected. They're going to give you a daily update. In many cases, my collateral review officers, even if you don't get an exception corrected while on site, they'll give you a few days even when they arrive in the office, and that's totally fine. It's up to them to do that. But they're going to give you an idea of what those exceptions are. And honestly, they're probably going to come to you if they're digging through a file and they cannot find a document. You all know your files way better than someone else reviewing them. They may just come to you and say, hey, I can't find the final title. Show me where it's at. And you guys can just find it like that. So that's going to be the contact throughout the review. Exception threshold, excuse me. Exception percentage is based on the number of exceptions identified divided by the number of loans in the core sample. We must maintain a 90% confidence level. So we're getting to that 10% threshold. They're going to work with you. Obviously, you're going to be aware of it. They're going to work with you to find as much of the exceptions as you can. Collateral verification results in an exit conference, they are going to share those results with you. They're going to let you know. And again, they'll leave it open until they even get back to the bank. If there's something that you're working on getting corrected or it's somewhere, they're going to wait and let you close that out. But they're going to give you all the information before you leave or before they leave. So there should be no surprises at the end of the collateral verification. And collateral opportunities, as Elaine said earlier, look at it as an opportunity, because it really is an opportunity to work with them and ask all those questions. And
right.
I'll tell you right now, with the environment we're in, where many members are asking and looking at additional eligible collateral, this is the time to ask the questions. I mean, they are the experts. They can sit down with you. They can really look at what you've already pledged and say, hey, I don't think you're pledging in this category, and let's go that route. So really ask those questions to them while they're outside. They are on site. They are great to work with. So I
was just going to say, so what happens when the officers come back in? What do they do with all of that information they've gained?
Well, they're busy. So they're busy writing their report. They will go ahead and go through, they'll compile all the information and finalize the results. And like I mentioned, they will give you that time to clear up those exceptions. So if that's a possibility, they will do that. Once they compile all the information and write up the report, they provide that to me. And really, depending on what the situation is, I mean, I'll be honest, in my short tenure here doing this position, most of them have come in have been great reviews. I've had very minimal amounts that have had issues. So you guys are doing a fabulous job out there, and keep up the good work. So I haven't had to do a lot of other actions further than just signing off and saying, hey, you're doing a great job. And once we approve the report, management, and if there is an issue, it does go to our chief credit officer for whatever actions we want to take, and he will sign off on it. Then a final letter would be provided to the members stating this is the outcome of your results. So
that official document is,
Yes. And if there is a fee, and that's only if it goes over the 20 hours. So I think that was a change recently, correct, Elaine?
I think that started last year. They waived the fee. So had gotten such great feedback on that we just went ahead and carried that on forward. So 20 hours, anything over 20 hours, then we bill.
Yes. And I don't see that happen actually very often either, because again, you guys are doing a good job. So it makes their process more efficient, and they can fly through those collateral reviews. So really haven't seen a lot. But if there is a fee assessed, it's at the end of the month following the finalization.
So that's definitely an incentive to get your documentation together and be prepared for that on-site visit. It makes it go so much faster.
It really does make it go faster.
And, an eligible loan is so much faster to qualify or to go through than an ineligible loan.
Exactly.
Because I know, I've heard over the years, they've worked with this member, they found, something that causes them pause, and they try their best to get that loan to qualify, right? So they spend a lot more time. So if you're pledging eligible loans and you have all of your documentation in order, they can just zip right through these files.
Yes, they really can.
Organization and preparation is key.
It really is. Okay, so as I stated a little bit earlier, when they get back on site, depending on the outcome, there could be possible collateral actions that we take. There's no action, no response required. Like I mentioned, this is predominantly what I've dealt with. There's been no action. Sometimes when they get back, there may be certain areas, something that's missing where it does require a written response. So we're going to notify you and say, hey, what are you going to do to correct this situation? Because we want to make sure going forward that we don't have the same issues with ineligible collateral. If they find something, this happens every once in a while, that may be reported incorrectly on the QCD form, you may have to amend the QCD and take that off. Or sometimes it's just putting it into another category. Probably the one that is again, haven't encountered it much since I've been here, is the discount of collateral. So if the exception threshold exceeds 10%, there would be a discount applied. And I believe this just changed recently too, but if the exception rate is over 10%, we will look at the exception rate calculated on the loan amount and see what that percentage is and average them both together. Okay. So, for example, on the loan count exception rate, if it's 15%, we will take a look at the loan amount exception rate. And if it were 25%, you would combine this together and average them to determine what the final discount would be, which in that case would be 20%. And exception rates are only calculated on core samples. The large loans are excluded from that exception rate. So discount is probably the one where people are fearing the most and want to make sure that I have people call in and say, well, we want to make sure we get this right. So it's because you're worried about that discount. So, and if we do encounter any kind of discount or issues, we will schedule a follow-up review on site. So we will get with you, and hopefully the next round, if you've followed the eligibility guidelines, took the advice of the collateral review officer, then next time around, hopefully we'll be able to remove that discount.
So the process of that, though, is would it be that, so this group of loans fell out because of X reason, and we give them time to rectify that, to get that taken care of, and then they would do they just notify us that they've taken care of it and they're ready for their on-site follow-up?
Usually we're going to just schedule it with you and work with you on the follow-up.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Yeah, we'll get that sent out for you. Another thing, we have a listing requirement. I don't believe we've done that very often historically, but we do have something we'll cover a little bit later that kind of addresses a change. Delivery of collateral. During the financial crisis, we had a lot delivered in. And when we're talking delivery, it's usually due to some financial condition that, it threatens your viability of the institution. So we're going to have you physically deliver in those loans and the documents that we do.
Right. Or if the loan officers find something really very big discrepancy across multiple asset categories where there's real concern about what is being pledged, then we can also require delivery for that reason as well.
Yes, we can. So I just used the worsening because, man, I remember being an analyst and you guys having tons on delivery.
So, hey, Deidre, we got a couple of questions. You want to go ahead and catch those now? Okay, so does a scanned copy of a loan modification qualify as an eligible loan, assuming there is a wet signature on the original note?
Yep, that would be fine.
Still eligible, yep.
Again, as long as you meet the other requirements, other requirements within the MPSG.
Okay, great. Got a question. What is a phase one?
It's looking at the risk environment. The report that is done, that an institution will have, that it's really looking at the risk or impact on environmental factors of a loan. So you want to make sure we have a clean phase one. And I've had this question a lot in the last few days, actually. What does that look like? So you would see a phase one typically on a gas station. Want to make sure the underground storage tanks aren't leaking or anything of that nature. We would see it on a Jiffy Lube, mechanics possibly, depending on what they're working with. Additional laundromats, dry cleaners, things of that nature. And someone asked, can you define that? I don't those are examples of what it is. I would say that when you're looking through a loan, or you would recognize, like, hey, there's something that could adversely impact the environment.
They're
here.
working with some type of chemicals or,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. So, and I asked my collateral review officers, because again, this is one of those documents that they may not even realize they need until they're looking in their loan. And they said, I can look at it in a loan write-up, maybe get some indicators, or maybe the appraisal will even have some indication that one's required, or we should be having one. So hopefully that gives you a little more insight.
And it looks like our last question is, do on-site visits occur for specific pledge members? No, they do not, because you have to deliver all of your collateral to us. So we look at each loan as they come in. So there wouldn't be any need for us to go out on site, because all of that documentation is here.
That is correct.
Good question.
Is that all the questions?
So far, so good.
Okay.
These are great questions, you guys. Really appreciate
Yes,
them.
thank you.
All right, so that kind of covers all of our collateral verification process. Again, preparation is key. We have had, our board of directors met last week, and we have lending value changes that are going into effect next week, Monday, for any delivered loan collateral and securities collateral. Lending value changes will go into effect for QCD, blanket pledge members that are reporting on the QCD. Those will go into effect when you file your 6/30 QCD form, which is due August 14th. So, one of the other underwriting collateral changes that was approved is this on LIBOR indexed loans. So everybody should be aware that the cessation of LIBOR is June 30th, 2023, right around the corner. So no adjustable rate IBOR index, which includes LIBOR loans, if your note date is after December 31st, 2021, that was linked to LIBOR. The 1 week, 2 month tenors, those are no longer being published. Those are not eligible. Or the IBOR tenors, the remaining IBOR tenors, that do not have effective fallback language that remains IBOR linked after June 30th, 2023. But keep in mind, the LIBOR Act for most loans, most securities, is covered under the LIBOR Act that was enacted by Congress in March of last year. It states, unless specific reasons, that it wouldn't. It's all to convert to a SOFR rate. So our expectations on this, we do ask that you break out your LIBOR index loans on your QCD form. We would expect when you fill out your 930 QCD form, because 630 they're still LIBOR linked. LIBOR is still there. When you fill out your 930 QCD form, there should not be any LIBOR loans listed on the other line, because you're either ineligible or they've already converted over to another index. Okay?
Yeah. Be gone.
All right. So there's that. Let's see, what else we have?
All right. So a little bit earlier, I did mention loan listing requirements and our collateral actions that we can take. Historically, this has not been done. However, in the latter part of 2022, it was changed that this is more of an indicator for non-performing assets, that the bank will require a collateral loan listing limited template if one of the following conditions is met. So for banks and thrifts, if your non-performing assets to Tier 1 capital and loan loss reserves is greater than 75%, you're going to be required now to complete a loan listing. So this will be new for us too, but just be aware of that. And for credit unions, it is a non-performing assets net worth plus loan loss reserves greater than 55%. And again, it's because we're seeing some kind of deterioration in the institution, and we want to get out there in front of it and get that collateral ready to go if the worst case situation happens, which we hope that doesn't happen, but we have to be prepared.
Right. Right. So it's that kind of interim, your blanket pledge still on the QCD form. You just have to submit the list of loans on our template that support the QCD form. It's kind of that intermediate between blanket and delivery.
Exactly. So that is a new change to be aware of. Here on the common exceptions identifies the frequently encountered, items that my collateral review officers come back and talk to me about. It's just missing documentation. It could be, final title policies to an appraisal or a correct appraisal, and just any of that information. Phase 1 reports that we've kind of already talked about that. They weren't provided or they weren't available when they were required. So hopefully there's some clarification on phase 1 this week. Subprime, predatory, non-traditional lending characteristics. Maybe when they were flipping through the files, they're seeing some of these characteristics, like maybe there's no FICOs, there's no debt to income, there's no tax returns or employment verifications, things of that nature. So they would let you know if they found any of that information on site. Title evidence, final title, I mentioned that early. The loan's not fully secured by eligible collateral. Unpaid principal balance exceeding the mortgage or deed of trust. Revolving lines of credit or loans not fully advanced. I think this has been common with commercial loans and revolving lines of credit. They've seen some of these deals not eligible. And exceeding interest on interest-only terms. Sorry. And matured loans. I believe I've had a few come back and said, well, this loan was actually matured. So at that point, that loan is gone. It's no longer on your books. It's not eligible. So just be aware that that's the case.
Right. And we don't. So when you submit your QCD form, it's as of a specific point in time. So, next week, Monday, the QCD application will open up for the 331 QCD forms. So what you're updating for the 331 are loans that were on your books as of 331. It may mature April 15th, but you don't have to amend your QCD form to take it off, right? It's whatever was on your books as of quarter end. Even if you amend your QCD form and you want to add additional collateral, that collateral has to have been on your books as of that quarter end that you're updating, okay?
Get that question a lot too. Okay, I think
our red signature topic.
So I will say, in my 7 months, I think I've been asked this question more than anything. Are you going to allow e-signatures on notes? And the answer at this time is no. We're still going to require a wet signature on that promissory note. It is my understanding over the last few years, I think we've allowed, like for other documentations filed electronically, that's acceptable. However, this is still necessary. And here we're going to talk about electronic signatures versus scanned documents versus e-notes. So it is confusing. I'm not going to lie. I think with our technology the way it is today, you would say, why can't I do this? But there is complete differences with that.
Right, because we have to prove that we have the original. Yeah. And if it's just an electronic signature, how do we know that that is the one and true document and it's not been sold to, some other entity?
And again, my understanding that a lot of that has to do with UCC law, and it hasn't kept up with technology. So that is why we will still, trust me, the minute we are allowed to take e-signature on promissory notes, you will be notified and everyone will know. So, but what an e-note is, this is something we actually take. We do have about, 7, 8 right now, a couple members pledging e-notes.
Yep.
It's a note that's executed electronically. It's stored in an e-vault, and it meets the requirements for an e-note, which at the bottom of this slide, you'll see a link, and that will give you, there's a document within there that tells you what the requirements are for an e-note. What an e-note is not, it is not a scanned image of a wet ink signature. It's not a note that's been electronically signed, like with DocuSign. That's not an e-note. It's not stored in the e-vault, and it doesn't meet e-note requirements. And again, remember, at this time, wet signature is still what we require. So
unless you want to go through the e-note process requirements, if you have e-notes, and would like to pledge them, please reach out. You know, that's a conversation with Deidre or myself. We can get you started on the right path. But absolutely, we take e-notes for single-family loans only today.
Yeah, and really the reason why we take the e-notes is because there has been an acceptable framework that's been built in the industry.
Right.
So it gives us that comfort with accepting those. And I have had a few members reach out to me in regards to e-notes. Again, I've heard it's a lot of work on the member side, but if you have done it initially, so when you're ready, please reach out to me because it'd be a learning, thing for me too. So just reach out if you have any questions regarding actual e-notes.
Okay. All right, well, so now we're to the official Q&A section of our presentation, but I think we've covered all of the questions as they come in, I believe. If you've had a question and we didn't answer it, please let me know. We'll get that covered. Shall we provide them our other opportunities then, Deidre, as we wait to see if anybody has any more questions?
Well, just wanted to reiterate, the accuracy of reporting eligible collateral, establishes borrowing capacity at the bank, as I mentioned earlier. Well, many members are doing that right now, reaching out to us, asking about what is available. They're building that capacity up. So just to keep that in mind. Maximize liquidity by allowing non-liquid assets to be used as collateral, and it reduces the expenses associated with collateral verifications. As we mentioned just a little bit earlier, that you get 20 hours free. After that, it is charged, and that's made a huge difference over the last year. So just keep that in mind. Here are some of the educational opportunities.
Right. Coming up, gosh, in just a few weeks is our annual management conference we hold in Kansas City. Excuse me, Overland Park. Great conference. We get tremendous accolades about our conference every year. So highly encourage you to attend if you can. We also have regional meetings throughout our 4-state area later in the fall. There will be more information coming out as those dates get closer. Your collateral review contact is always call if you have questions. We're here to help you. We want you to be successful. Mm-hmm. Hey, we had a question come in, Deidre. Okay. It says, regarding on-site visits, are they, I'm sorry, we caught that one. Over here. Can you cover eligibility requirements for pledging lines of credit again?
Well, let's see. Don't have that in front of me.
So, they're open-ended.
Yeah. Open-ended, okay. What specifically, there's a lot of information on that. Is there anything in particular that you want to know?
Is there anything?
Because there's a lot of...
Yeah. And Chris, we can get with you after the webinar and kind of go through that and answer your questions that way if that works better.
Yeah, I was going to say, Carissa, if you would like to, you could email me, Deidre, right after the webinar. My email is at the end.
Here we are.
And that might be better, so we can kind of go through that a little bit better with what you're exactly wanting on that or needing to know. Okay.
Got another question came in. We've had conversations about commercial real estate loans that the collateral review officer or reviewer felt that a phase 1 was required. They cited it appears that the occupant could be doing service work or oil changes on the site. To extrapolate that through process, could not the same be said for single-family residential properties?
I mean, I guess it could be extrapolated that way. However, I don't know how I would manage that part. We know I really don't know. Part of the industry, I think it's a common requirement.
But if it's a commercial real estate, so there's a business there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Versus a residential.
Yeah.
So the commercial, that's what they're going to do all day long. Versus,
exactly.
Are you thinking maybe somebody is running a business out of their home?
Yeah.
That would be a little different. You wouldn't be able to detect that. So that's a good question, though. That's a good question.
It is a good question.
Well, goodness. All right. Well, I think wait a minute. Been pledging these the ones to start. I'll follow me. Okay, great. I I don't see any more questions coming in. So gosh, we actually finished 5 minutes early. We can give you 5 minutes back to your day. If you ever have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You know, we have great staff we get to work with every day. They're here to help you guys, right? We're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Yep.
So,
Yes.
well, thank you all very much for taking time out of your busy days to be with us. Tomorrow is a pure Q&A session, tomorrow morning. We actually are going to have a panel of review officers and some operations staff in here that we'd love to have any questions you can think of and throw them our way. So hopefully we'll see you tomorrow morning. All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.